Hey guys, BixWeirdRoadToRooter.com. Wanted to walk you through some of the things I look at as far as Bitcoin prices. And, I am not a chart guy. I'm not a tech guy, especially because in gold and silver, they're manipulated. So how can you measure any trend on a chart when you know it's manipulated, and 99% of the time they're using those charts against you and against the lesser sophisticated players in the gold and silver markets to get them excited to run one way or the other, and then just to slam it, dash all hopes, dash all dreams in gold and silver. But it's not as bad in Bitcoin. But there are some things going on that I think are really interesting, and the more you look at it, the more it's kind of obvious about what's going on, and not necessarily obvious about who is doing it. But really exciting for the future of Bitcoin. So I'm just going to walk you through some charts here. Now, this is the Bitcoin chart as per Bitstamp. This is the lifetime chart. This is since day one when it was 0. And don't you wish you had bought Bitcoin right in this area right here? Would have been nice, right? We all kick ourselves. But then again, we kick ourselves when we think about buying Bitcoin in the $200 range when it was down here just a couple years ago. So you really need to get your hands on kind of where you think Bitcoin is going and how long you're willing to wait it out. If I had asked you in 2012, 2013, if you would like to buy some Bitcoin at $10 or under $10, back then you said, "Are you crazy? It's insane. What's Bitcoin?" Basically, you hadn't done your homework, and I hadn't done my homework because a lot of people asked me, "Hey, why don't you buy some Bitcoin under $10?" I didn't do it, of course, and thus I'm still working, and so are you. But what we need to think about is not what happened in the past, but where we're going from here. How many of your friends, relatives, neighbors know anything at all about Bitcoin? My guess, 0. I even live in the most tech-savvy place in the whole world. I only have a few friends who work in the Bitcoin industry and a few friends who know about it and understand it. I've explained it to so many people as I walk around, and yet they still don't get it. My family doesn't get it. My friends don't get it. The only reason anybody, friends and family, own Bitcoin, other than 2 or 3 people who work in the industry, are that I gave them a Bitcoin for Christmas years ago, and that's the only Bitcoin they own, and they still don't know anything about it, even though they've seen it go up massively in price. They probably don't even know it went up in price. So yes, we are in the very early days of Bitcoin. We are back here for most of the population. We're at those days where who would have known anything about buying Bitcoin under $10? Now it's like, who would have known anything about buying Bitcoin under $1,200 or under $1,300 or whatever the price is as it moves up and up. But this little presentation's gonna kind of give you an idea of what I think is going on in the Bitcoin price and where we'll probably go and how fast we'll go. So we went through 2013, 2014. End of 2013 is when really humanity started waking up to it. Not humanity, just a couple of people with a lot of money. And they were buying. All this I attribute to the largest exchange in the world, Mt. Gox. Mt. Gox it wasn't necessarily a criminal enterprise, and it wasn't that it was a just unsophisticated operation. What happened was the same thing that can happen to any other Bitcoin exchange, or even the stock market, the bond market, the gold and silver markets. It was run on a fractional reserve system. So the Mt. Gox would bring in money or Bitcoin from on the blockchain transactions to bring the Bitcoin or the money into the exchange. And when it's within the exchange, it would trade back and forth to each other. None of those trades happen on the blockchain because they only have a certain amount of coins. I think it was 600,000 in Mt. Gox, but millions of coins were traded every week, and some of the bigger players said, "Oh my God, what's happening here?" Or they did it on purpose, which is more likely they did it on purpose. Some of the big banks to shut down the competition for what is good money. They started withdrawing their Bitcoin from the exchange, and if you're leveraged up 10, 20, 30 to 1 within this exchange, and someone takes out 10% or 5% of your Bitcoin, all of a sudden everything implodes. And that's why the owner of Mt. Gox said, "Oh my God, we've been hacked. We've lost X amount of Bitcoin." They weren't hacked. They didn't lose it. People withdrew it, and then they shut down because they knew they didn't have the Bitcoin. And that's goes for any exchange, the stock market, the bond market, anything. They trade in fractional reserves of what the underlying asset is. So for mining shares, yes, 10, 20 times the amount of shares trade on a weekly, monthly basis than the amount of shares that are actually out there. So you are invested in something that 10 other people are invested in the exact same share as you, and the brokerage houses don't put it in your name and don't go out and buy the stock for you. It's put into a pool, and they work off the pool. So the same thing is going on in all the exchanges. That's why China came in and shut down the 3 largest Bitcoin exchanges in China, because they saw what was going on and the volumes were off the charts, and so they came in and shut it down. And the first thing that these exchanges did was say there's no withdrawals in Bitcoin because it's not there. You can withdraw cash, but you can't withdraw anything in Bitcoin. So China basically knows that Bitcoin is going to be a very big part of their future. 1.4 billion people. It's pretty important to China to keep that industry safe and sane. And so they basically told the exchanges to halt all operations as far as, well, they said clean up your act, and the exchanges said, well, we're going to have to halt Bitcoin withdrawals. And volumes have gone to almost nothing, which they should be almost nothing. And there's still some exchanges out there in Europe and in Japan that are trading at just huge multiples of the amount of Bitcoin they actually have. So be careful out there where you keep your Bitcoin. Always keep your Bitcoin in your own pocket if you can, through something like a Trezor electronic wallet, or better yet, a offline paper wallet, which I like. And make sure you make those wallets offline so nobody, the government, can't see what you're doing. And there's videos on, I have a Bitcoin assistance program in the private section of roadtoruda.com. Walks you through how to get Bitcoin and how to store it properly. All right, but here's what I wanted to point out as far as the chart and where Bitcoin is probably going from here. So back in 2014, we had the Mt. Gox spike, all the hedge funds were getting in, and then you had the announcement, or kind of announcement, that they lost all their coins and all the crashes, and so it went back down to about $200 and hung out there for about a year. So the really interesting thing is that right here in it was May-June timeframe of 2015, Richard Branson, the Virgin Airline guy, who's really into Bitcoin, held a meeting on his private island, Necker Island, and in that meeting he brought in like 20 or so Bitcoin experts and people with a lot of money in Bitcoin, and said, how are we gonna bring Bitcoin into the mainstream? What are the big problems? They spent, I think it was a week talking about Bitcoin and figuring things out. One of the biggest problems at that point in time in 2015 was that Bitcoin was too volatile. People didn't like the volatility. And I don't know this, I think a group of them got together and said, okay, how can we make Bitcoin less volatile? Well, why don't we sell during the spikes and buy during the drops? Because that way we can smooth it out. We can smooth out that curve. And if you look at what happened right here on the graph, since the time of that meeting in the May-June time frame of 2015, we got a nice, smooth, steady rise in Bitcoin, at least for like the first year. And then they met again in 2016 around the same time frame. And you notice every time there's a big spike, it falls back down to that nice, smooth, steady curve. Look at that. And then it started going up a little bit, and it was allowed to go up basically in 2016. And all these spikes and slams are news, are Bitcoin news. And Bitcoin news is funny because you can make up anything for Bitcoin and call it news and say, oh, this is the reason Bitcoin went up and this is the reason Bitcoin went down. I think it's being controlled fairly well by these Bitcoin, I call them the Bitcoin Illuminati, the people who met with Richard Branson, or other people. It could be the U.S. government, it could be the Chinese government, because both China and the U.S. have huge plans for Bitcoin in the future, because they know what's going on in the other system, in the unbacked fiat money system. So right now we're looking at, this is the lifetime chart. Let's get into a 2-year chart. Now this is the time when the Bitcoin Illuminati met in May of 2015. You can see the slow and steady rise. Every time I got too high, they brought it down, and it never got too low, because if you look at, you can draw a line right here, the little swish. So it gets too high here, and they bring it down, and right along the line of the trend, it comes right back and starts going up. But now you notice, since the last meeting, which was right around here of the Bitcoin Illuminati, look at what jumped up and got brought back down again. We're starting to rise a little higher, and I think they're going to keep it on this slow swoop, because they don't want sentiment to get too low. Like it points like this, where it comes a little below the trend line, they get a little worried and they bring it up a little. Again, just recently it was below the trend line, but if you think about, is Bitcoin a good thing to buy at 1100, and you follow the trend line like this, if this is truly what's going on with the Bitcoin Illuminati, then we're getting to a point where this is starting to increase much more. And the reason it's increasing much more is we're entering, or about to enter, a phase where we have a destruction of the unbacked monetary system, the fiat money system. So they want Bitcoin to go smooth and steady all the way up to the point where the monetary system is destroyed, and then it's just going to shoot up off the charts in relation to the unbacked fiat money. That's what I believe. Now I don't think the bad guys, as I call them, I think they've pretty much given up on trying to destroy Bitcoin, but now they're thinking, well, if Bitcoin is going to be the money of the future, in some respects, to countries like China, which is very clear to me that they are planning to introduce Bitcoin as part of their new solution to the monetary system. Same with the United States. That's why the United States hasn't passed any laws practically stopping people from getting into Bitcoin. I think we're really going to see a ramp up coming up as we come into the summer, and the falling down of the unbacked fiat monetary system, which you can see all around you. So yeah, now is a great time. You know, we had the jump up when the ETF was coming, if that was the reason or not, and then the dive where it went under 900, where everybody said, "Oh my God, Bitcoin's dead." For the 100th time, they've said Bitcoin's dead. It's tiring to listen to. But a lot of these people in here had never been through a real big, good Bitcoin slam, and so a lot got scared out and went into altcoins like Dash and Ripple and things like that. Which is great for the other coins. I have no problem with the other coins. I think Ether is a long-term coin. I think Ether will do second best or even better than Bitcoin, but for different reasons. But Ether's not really a currency, a form of currency. It's something different. It's different technology built into electronic items that there's a lot of uses for Ether. I see it more as a blockchain type of technology instead of a Bitcoin currency. So yeah, I'd load up on Ethereum. It's already up, what, 600, 700% past couple months, but it's got a long way to go. As the unbacked fiat system crashes, so will the cryptos will do really well. There will be a lot of cryptos that die and go to zero. Just a warning, because there's so many of them, and ultimately there'll only be 1 or 2, maybe 3 that survive, and they all would have to have a different purpose. Bitcoin, obviously, for the means of exchange aspects and the all the things that make money good. Bitcoin will get over its scalability issue. I'm not worried about that. As soon as the banks start to wobble, everybody in the Bitcoin community will be begging for the Bitcoin Unlimited solution, because it will be more valued as a means of exchange at that point. When the banks go down and people have no means of exchange, of course, Bitcoin will be a huge cure to the problem of central banking and unbacked fiat money, which is exciting. I mean, Bitcoin is kind of a transition currency out of the old system into something new. Ultimately, I think, decades out or maybe centuries out, we won't have a need for money. When replicators get to the point where they can make anything you want, your basic necessities, food, clothing, anything, there would be really no need specifically for money. I don't think, but possibly. But that'll take a while. It'll take maybe 100 years. But how long is 100 years? I mean, that's a lifetime of the oldest living people. So yeah, the world is changing, and if you're scared about getting into Bitcoin, I'd be a lot more scared about staying in the unbacked system, because the world is passing you by, and it's pretty obvious these days the way that technology is changing. And it'll change a lot faster when these new technologies that have been hidden from humanity, the free energy type of stuff comes out. And ride the wave, get on board, and as the world changes, change with it. I still say that silver is the best investment. I love Bitcoin, but silver has been suppressed for 150 years, and the releasing of that suppression is where if you're just thinking on the investment side, it's going to be the biggest thing that's ever happened in the history of investing, and it's going to be very exciting, and it'll be very freeing and liberating for free markets once again, which would be really nice, wouldn't it? Anyway, so this is the Bitcoin chart. Really exciting days in Bitcoin. If it drops, 30-40%, because it's going to go up and drop, because these Bitcoin Illuminati say we got to keep it on the trend line, and the trend line's starting to slope up, which is great. So you look at the year chart again. Look how it just stays on that trend line. Even when it spikes up, it gets slammed down to the trend line. So right now we're moving right into here, and this is all coming in an upward angle. It doesn't have to be exactly straight. As you can tell from the 2-year chart, we got a little curve going on the trend line, and I think that curve has to do with the looming crashing of the unbacked fiat monetary system, and Bitcoin being positioned to be a major participant in the alternatives to unbacked fiat money, which is great. This is Bixweir. You get a free book if you go to my website, roadtoruta.com. Put your name in, put your email in, and you get emailed a free PDF book called Silver, Gold, Bitcoin, and God. And it's exciting times for silver, gold, and Bitcoin, and probably God too in the near future. And sign up for this this YouTube channel. I'm posting as much as I can, get the information out as fast as possible to help you through this transition. Again, this is Bixweir signing out.